3.1, conversions. So there are two measurement systems used in the world today. We have the metric system and we have the imperial system. The metric system was actually developed in France, and it was based on the universe. So the measure of 1 meter is 1/10,000,000th of the distance between the North Pole and the equator. So 1/10,000,000th. So if I were to say that as a decimal, that would be 1, and then this is 10th, 100th, 1,000th, 10,000th, 100,000th, a million, 10,000,000th. So 1/10,000,000th of the distance between the equator and the North Pole. So that's how the metric system was based, and it's all in base 10. So if you'll notice here, like 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters, 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, 1 centimeter equals 1 millimeter. It's all based on 10. It kind of helps with calculations of those kind of units. The imperial system, which was originally made in England, actually, it was based on the human body. So the easiest one to think about that as a foot, kind of based on how big our feet are. Now, if you look at a foot, that's actually a pretty big foot. 30 centimeters is actually quite large for a foot. But that's what it was originally based off of. We currently use it in the States, and because we're so close to the States, Canada uses it too. So you will need to be able to convert within each system with ease. So here are just a few relationships that we have. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. 1 yard is 3 feet. 1 foot is 12 inches. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters, and 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. You've probably seen these so much in your schooling that maybe these numbers, you know them, you've memorized them. I find that these ones are a little bit trickier to memorize than the metric system ones, just because the metric system ones are base 10. So there are so many different ways that you can convert between the two things, but what I'm going to be focusing on today is I'm going to be showing you a cross-multiplying method. So this is something that you've done before, even in this course, but what gets it to be a bit of a spicy meatball is going to be what happens when we convert between feet squared and yards squared and inches cubed. Okay, so let's just first off do the first two examples, and then I'm going to take a moment to kind of explain a little bit. So if you wanted to convert 4 yards into feet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find yards and feet, the relationship. So when I look at yard and feet, 1 yard equals 3 feet. I'm going to change that into a fraction. So I'm going to say 1 yard is 3 feet. Now it says right here, determine the relationship. Check. Set up the ratios that equal each other. So I'm just going to put the first things first. This is the relationship. Okay. And now I'm going to use the specific. So this one is the relationship that we know. And this is question. So we want to keep yards with yards and feet with feet. So this is 4 yards. Yards goes on top because the 1 yard is on top. So 4 yards. And now what I want to do is I want to solve for x. So what I can say here is I'm going to say x equals the opposites multiplying each other. So 3 times 4 divided by 1. So x equals 12. And is it going to be feet or yards? There are a few ways that we can say this. I can write down 3 feet because that's the unit that's attached to it, 4 yards, and 1 yards. So I can say that the yards cancel and we get feet. Okay. Another way that we can think about it is I can say, okay, yards go on top. I know what my yards are, and the one on the bottom is going to be feet. That's how I can do it. Or I can just like look at the question and be like, oh, we're converting to feet. That's feet then. There are lots of different ways that we can confirm that. Convert 3 kilometers into centimeters. What's tricky about this one is it's a two-step. Because first what we need to do is we need to go from kilometers to meters. And then we need to go from meters to centimeters. Because there's no relationship between kilometers and centimeters. There's just the kilometers to meters and then meters to centimeters. So I'm just going to keep this in mind here. So I know that 1,000 meters is the same thing as 1 kilometer. So in this scenario, it doesn't matter which one goes on top or which one goes on the bottom. You just have to be consistent. So 1,000 meters divided by 1 kilometer. So kilometers goes on the bottom, so that's what we're given here. So 3 kilometers, and we're going to solve for x. X equals 3 times 1,000 divided by 1, which is going to be 3,000. That's so funny. I did that in class too. 3,000 meters. Now we're going to take that meter and change it into centimeter. So now I look up here. 1 meter is 100 centimeter. So 1 meter over 100 centimeters. So centimeters goes on the bottom, meters goes on the top, and that's just, again, just arbitrary. You could switch the order, it didn't matter. So I'm going to put the meters on top, so I have 3,000 meters on top, and then I need to find out what my number of centimeters are, and I find them on the bottom. So then my next x is going to be 100 times 3,000. If I really wanted to be picky, I could say that this was y instead. Why don't we do that? That's a little bit more mathy. Just because we've solved for x here. Okay, and they're separate. They're different. Don't forget your units. So I'm going to say 100 times 3,000 divided by 1. 100 times 3,000 divided by 1. That's going to be 300,000 centimeters. Booyah. Okay, so that's great. So now converting between feet squared and yards squared, that takes a little bit of fancy footwork. So I want to just take a little bit of a side note here. If I looked at a centimeter squared, pretend that the length of this is 1 centimeter. Pretend that the length of this is 1 centimeter. How many, so this whole thing is going to be 1 centimeter squared. Think about it. How many millimeters squared are there in this centimeter squared? In class, and like this is something that I might not get if I were in your shoes. It's actually a little bit more abstract for me. The numbers are always a little bit bigger than I thought. A common answer is 10 because there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. But let's think about it. If I break this up into 10, because in this centimeter here I have 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is 1 centimeter too, and I have 10 millimeters in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I draw this grid, you can find out exactly how many centimeters, exactly how many millimeters squared there are. We could count them, but I think that there's an easier way to be able to figure this out. So I have 10 groups of 10. So that means that it's 10 squared. So there's 100 millimeters squared. 100 millimeters squared equals 1 centimeter squared. It always shocks me actually how many how many millimeters squared there are actually in 1 centimeter. Because 1 centimeter squared isn't that big. Like if you were to actually measure it out, it's maybe like something like that, and 1,000 of something fit in there. That's pretty crazy. Let's extend it. Let's go to cube. So if we have a centimeter cube, this is 1 centimeter, this is 1 centimeter, and this is 1 centimeter. So let's extend what we did here. If we said that since there were 10 millimeters in a centimeter, there are 100 centimeters squared in 1 millimeter. In 1 centimeter squared, I mean. So I would say 1 centimeter over 10 millimeters. If I square that, I get 1 centimeter squared is the same thing as 100 millimeters squared. Okay, so this is the relationship. Let's do that with cubing. Well, if I were to say 1 centimeter is the same thing as 10 millimeters, but I'm gonna take a cube instead, so I'm gonna raise it to the power of 3. That means that 1 centimeters squared is the same thing as 10 to the power of 3, which is 1,000 centimeters. 1,000 millimeters squared. So that's how you can find these things. If you're looking for volume, you cube the relationship. If you're looking for area, you square the relationship. So if we're talking about yards, we're saying 1 yard is the same thing as 3 feet. So area is going to be 1 yard over 3 feet, all to the power of 2. 1 yard times 1 yard is 1 yard squared. 3 feet times 3 feet is 9 feet squared. But if we're looking for volume, we're going to raise it to the relationship to the power of 3. So 1 yard over 3 feet to the power of 3. So 1 yard cubed is the same thing as 27 feet cubed. So that's all you have to do. And if you wanted to take a one time and just kind of go through and make a chart using all of the values that we've been given, that's going to be good. But let's look at this relationship first. So feet squared and yard squared. So we developed that already. So feet squared to yard squared, the conversion here is 1 yard squared equals 9 square feet. So I'm going to just write this relationship because we've already figured it out. So 1 square yard is the same thing as 9 square feet. So the feet squared goes on the bottom of the relationship. So I'm going to say 48 feet squared, and we're solving for x. So in order to find x, I'm going to say 1 times 48 divided by 9. X is going to be 5.3 repeating, and we're looking for yards, so yards squared. That's it. So let's pause for a second here. Let's make a few rules. So we talked about cross multiplying. It is just easy to remember when you multiply and when you divide, but if you forget if you multiply or divide, you're kind of lost. You know, you can't find your way. But if you cross multiply, it's something that's always going to work. But if we wanted to take a bit of a shortcut, when we convert from yards to feet, so that's a bigger unit to a smaller one, we're going to multiply. And this one, we ended up dividing. And look at this, a smaller measurement to a larger measurement. Oh, don't forget the double L. Smaller to a bigger. We want to divide. That's it. Because what I could have done with this one is I could have just said 4 times 3. Or I could have just said this one, 48 divided by 9. And I could have found the exact same answer in a little bit of a shorter time. So we want to go from inches to yards, but let's look at our relationships that were given here. We have inches to foot and then feet to yards, but we don't have directly from yard to inches. So we have to do a two-step. So first we need to go from inches cubed to feet cubed. And then we need to go from feet cubed to yards cubed. So first of all, let's figure out what the ratio is. So I know that 1 foot is 12 inches. But it's a cubic, okay? It's a volume, so it's raised to the power of 3. So that means that it's going to be 1 foot cubed is the same thing as 12 cubed. I'm just taking out my calculator here, and it is, I should have remembered that, 1728 inches cubed. And now we need to go from feet cubed to yards cubed. So let's find the ratio. So I know that 1 yard is 3 feet. But what I need to do is I need to raise that to the power of 3. So then that is 1 cubic yard divided by 27 cubic feet. Great. So now we have our relationships. Now we can do our calculating. So I'm going to say 1 foot cubed over 1728 inches cubed equals, so the inches are on the bottom, so that's where my 50 inches cubed are going to go, over x. So we're going to say x equals 1 times 50 divided by 1728. And so we get, I'm just going to do this on a calculator on the side, 50 divided by 1728 equals 0.02895, and my units are going to be feet cubed. Great. Now what we're going to use here is we're going to use that and put it into this relationship here. So I'm going to say 1 yard cubed over 27 feet cubed is the same thing as, I have my feet, so I'm going to say 0.028935. I'm going to solve for my y. I almost put x here again, but I'm going to say that's my y. So y equals 1 times 28935 divided by 27. So I'm going to divide that by 27. And I get 0.00107. And that's going to be my yard cubed. Question. What's more meaningful to you? What can you visualize better? 50, okay, 50 inches cubed? Or 0.00107 yards cubed? I'm guessing you're thinking that the 50 is a little bit easier to visualize. So that's why we have a whole bunch of unit conversions. Sometimes we need to convert because we're only given, say, a price of volume of gravel in yards cubed. But we know that we need 50 inches cubed, like how much of a yard of soil, say, or gravel do we need to buy. So that's why it's important to do that. But like, thank goodness we have lots of different units so that we can kind of visualize and make sense of the information that's given to us.